If you're an investor or high net worth individual, you should be terrified of what's happening today when it comes to the consolidation of telecommunications in America. I'm Justin Hitt with Sustainable Wealth Secrets. One of the things that sustains wealth is being able to protect it from identity theft, information gathering, and even state-run resources and criminal resources who want to get access to what you have. Now, you might not think that you have very much, but if you have just $1 million in the bank, whether it's all your net worth or actual cash, that's a lot of money to somebody in a third world country running a criminal network. Why do you think the Nigerian scams have been running for so long, so consistently? Well, a few $100s in a Nigerian scam produces quite a good lifestyle for somebody. But these scams, including the viral scams, the computer hostage scams, the scams associated with product returns through banking, the Nigerian scams, they net millions and millions of dollars each year. In some of these networks, they're taking away $2 or $3 million as a single operator. Imagine what a network of individuals produces. Now, the fear in the telecommunication side, or the concern on the telecommunication side, is that popular platforms that are being promoted in news media are actually highly vulnerable to third-party review. In fact, I did some beneficial ownership tracing, which I've discussed in other podcasts, and found that 3 of the major webinar platforms or remote video conferencing platforms are owned by companies that have patents on lawful intercept. They have patents and instances of security breaches. They've even had their user accounts leaked on the dark web. This is a serious situation when you have something to lose. If you're a business owner, a high net worth individual, a public figure, or have some concern that your intellectual property could be compromised or exploited in the marketplace, then you need to pay attention very carefully. The challenge is that we've become so comfortable with social media, instant communications, even our cell phones, that we don't think about the back doors that are left in chips, software, and other things. Back in the day, I worked for some defense contractors, and I was a technician, and my job was to drop a little tiny piece of solder onto a specific part of a chip inside of a Sun Microsystems computer. This section was to short out the microphone that was in the chip itself. So the chip had a microphone for monitoring the fans in the computer and different environmental elements inside the computer. The vulnerability is that microphone could be remotely activated to listen in on classified environments. So we went in and actually soldered on the motherboard, where specifically working with the manufacturer, we soldered on the motherboard to disable this microphone to prevent the risk. Now you might be saying, well, Justin, that was a very expensive computer, a $20,000, $30,000 computer. We don't. Today, your mobile devices, including the iPad I'm recording this on right now, can be remotely activated to listen in, to view conversations, to even capture what's on the screen. Now, you probably already know this because if you got one of those apps to monitor your children's use of mobile devices, if you have one of those systems to monitor the use of your employees, or even to monitor use on your website, such as Google Analytics and other tools that monitor, you know that you can monitor behavior, and it's very useful, even on the marketing side. And so why not manufacturers having this capability? Why not have this built into devices? Well, unfortunately, nefarious actors or even governments have used these devices to listen in on individuals. They listen in on conversations. They beat businesses to the marketplace. The challenge becomes is when the back end of the ownerships of companies influences the application of the technology. So, for example, if a video conferencing company had a lawful entry point that decrypts communications, then re-encrypts that communications before passing it along to the recipient, then that same mechanism could be used to listen into your business conference calls, to your family planning meetings with a lawyer, It could be used in a sensitive situation. It could be one person who's calling in on a device or voice over IP provider who openly hands their keys to a foreign government. You could be a target of scammers who use your social media and determine where you live, your personal home address, your age and the age of your children, your birth date, and even social security number in some cases. Have you ever noticed how many of the security questions that you're asked by social media sites, by websites that do quizzes and competitions, by even your bank, are useful pieces of information that can be used to open credit in your name? Now, I'm not trying to scare anybody. I just want you to be more aware, because we've been so comfortable with technology, we forget that a compromise can dump 100,000 records in seconds, even millions of records. There are examples of this where well-known security companies failed to secure political actors' computers from Russian hackers. Now, first off, we don't question the fact that why was the computer there in the first place. We don't question a lot of the other elements because we're constantly bombarded by this news stream. So the things that we're talking about today, you might know about. You might know that social media puts your children at risk. It puts you at risk, but we don't do anything about it. What about that latest app that you were required to download when you visited your bank? Is it secure? Why is it asking to access your contact list? We saw in the news with COVID how mobile device manufacturers, software providers, and other apps volunteered to do what's called contact tracing. That's a situation where if somebody you know had coronavirus or tested positive for coronavirus, you could be notified on your mobile device when in proximity to that individual, or in general that individual has COVID. Now, that's a violation of HIPAA. That's a violation of all kinds of privacy concerns. That takes away individual responsibility. Now, we don't need to go down that rabbit hole. My point being is that how do you really know that the software, the platforms, the communications devices, and the things that you depend on every day really work the way they're supposed to work? Now, I'm assuming that the majority of manufacturers are trying to take care of their customers' interests. I've been in the computer and IT world from an enterprise level for more than 20 years now. I've been an IT consultant, and I've also worked with security agencies and in environments where security, even background radiation was considered. The old CRT monitors, you could look at them remotely by reproducing the screen images using radiation from the device itself. Now, we're not going to get all spy tech and things like that. There are organizations available today who can look at your public profile. They can look at the devices and software you're using. They can even penetrate test the items that you're using, and they can make recommendations about secure platforms to protect your interests. They can also talk with you about counterintelligence. Many times when senior level executives get together, they do counterintelligence activities such as meeting agenda items that are throwaway, so that if that meeting agenda item shows up in the news, they know they got a leak in the room. There's also the use of temporary devices by high-profile individuals rather than permanent devices by high-profile individuals to better mask movement. And this is important if you do foreign travel. I know it sounds a lot of cloak and dagger, but if you're a senior level executive and you're about to do foreign travel, are you aware of the situations that could arise? And then if something does happen, could you get back to normal quickly as possible? What if you were on the cruise ship when the coronavirus broke out and you're stuck on a ship for 2 weeks and you have limited communications and access? What kind of bank transactions and activities could have happened during that period that you would not have been able to secure without the proper pre-planning? And we don't have to go as far as executive extraction. We can just simply go as far as, do we know the devices that we use are secure? Do we know that the environments in which we're communicating are maintaining our intellectual property? Do we know that our data sets are properly maintained and in the right environments so that they aren't leaked and compromise our clients or put us in a position where we might violate regulations? Even if you set aside bad foreign actors, terrorist organizations, and criminal elements, there are ongoing concerns with the patch level and the security levels of your software. In fact, millions of people today are boasting about using a platform that has had repeat violations and vulnerabilities that have not been fixed. And this is something you've got to know about, especially when you have something to lose, especially if you're a high net worth individual, especially if you're in an organization where you're working on intellectual property such as pharmaceutical, you're working with client confidentiality such as legal or healthcare, or even you're developing a new solution. The last thing you need is the software to disappear or to get out on the open market. There are environments such as the dark web. There are environments such as black markets selling information about individuals. And there are people who target and do specific target attacks using phishing, fake websites, even trolling people on social media. You need to at least have an assessment and an understanding of where your risks stand. How do you get started with this? Well, I can recommend some resources to get you started, and they can look at a brief assessment or walk you through a briefing so that you understand at least where to get started. You also want to look at categorization of your assets. You need to know if there's a significant financial change somewhere in your environment, and not necessarily just where you are. The problems we're having right now with food supply chain and medical supply chain demonstrates the importance of how you manage your procurement. So it's not just the technology, but it's how we implement that technology. I want you to have a clear mapping of your systems and processes, as well as any controls associated with giving you early warning about things. Now, even if you're just an investor and you rely on knowing what's going on in a marketplace, many of this profile information is helpful. And there's newsletters out there I can recommend you to. There's platforms that provide early warning and threat analysis. And if you have IT people on staff, many of those people are already plugged into those environments. The key thing is understanding that you may not actually be having a private conversation. The software on your computer may not be doing exactly what it's supposed to be doing, and that the computing environment that you depend on every day may not be working in your best interest. Even those devices that we just have to buy because it's so convenient to shout out across the room to order new toilet paper, they may be doing things that we don't expect, and acknowledging that and getting in a position of awareness is that next step. It's that place to go. I'm Justin Hitt with Sustainable Wealth Secrets, and I'm talking specifically about that infrastructure around your wealth. How do we make sure that infrastructure is working for you and working in your best interest? If you have questions about this or anything else we cover, you can visit www.sustainablewealthsecrets.com. And we're working together with a number of resources to put together a toolkit that can get you started in this area. Again, if you have specific questions, I don't need to know the details of your situation. I just need to know what is your concern and what is the outcome that you'd like to achieve. And what you'll discover is that people are waking up to the dangers of this instant-on society that's connected to a device 24 hours a day. And it's not just the funny memes where people are walking into walls because they're paying attention to their device. Every employee in your organization, every legal and financial person you work with, and every turn you make in the marketplace needs to work in your benefit. And the only way to work in your benefit, to build your wealth, to build your security, and to support your long-term interests is if you have a clear understanding of the tools and their implementation, not a technical understanding, but an understanding that they're working for you rather than you working for them. Again, thanks for listening. I'm Justin Hitt with Sustainable Wealth Secrets. Ask your questions at www.sustainablewealthsecrets.com.